I was feeling so much pressure that I'd put on myself that I don't think it possibly could become more. That was quite a strategic point for me, if you like, and I tried to execute a plan to maximise sleep at that point.
I was riding down to where the ferries go, and then the security guard came over and asked me what I was doing, and I was like, oh, just about 8 hours early for my ferry. And they were like, yeah, sorry, there's no risk, stay here.
It was probably the most confident I was in the race, if you like, because that confidence started to wane as you chased me, but and the doubts about whether I could get that Friday night ferry.
It was just a bit of a bizarre way to finish, because it was obviously you obviously raced like the way around Ireland, and then going to this final sprint. Hello, welcome, Paul.
Hi.
How are you doing? Have you recovered from the Pan Celtic?
So. I'm on the way to recovery. I'm still having a good few lazy afternoons on the sofa. General fatigue, not particularly in the legs, or I'm not ill or anything, but I've definitely been run down. I feel like I'm over it and ready to start LEL at the weekend.
Yeah, great. I think it's good to have this chat, isn't it? We were saying just before we started recording that it'd be interesting to compare notes and see how our different races went. Should we just give a little introduction to each of us, just in case? I'm sure most people know you, but if you just give a quick background of your cycling.
So I'm 44 years old. I've been cycling, I would say, quite long distances since forever, really. And after doing many sports over the years, came back to cycling and sort of took up doing sort of Audaxes all over Europe. Some of the harder ones, and really enjoyed that. And then I guess in the Pan Celtic realms, my first Pan Celtic was 2021, and I had that good battle with Chris Bardo that got immortalised in the YouTube video. That is quite nice. And then obviously bringing us right up to this year, I entered Pan Celtic 22 and won.
And what actually, because you say you started doing the Audaxes, which obviously long distances, but not competitive, or not you can be competitive with yourself, but it's not race.
Exactly.
So what made that jump.
Yeah, exactly. So even in an Audax, you're chasing a time standard, and even within the Audax and within that time standard, there's people wanting to be first round, and I've always been in that front group, wanting to be first round and wanting to get the best out of myself, wanting to do things in a progressive way. And COVID, maybe a year off the bike gave me a bit of time to think and change modes a little bit and think, actually, let's go for one that has race at the end of the title and see how I fare. So that was Pan Celtic 21.
Yeah, and how did you when you were looking at the route for the Pan Celtic 22? How did you think that? What were your first thoughts and reactions to it compared to the previous version?
Yeah, so it was long, wasn't it, when you first looked at it? But then you realised that you needed to take the ferry out. The bits on the water were included in the route.
That was
that was a mistake quite a few people made, I think, when they first looked at the poster. But then also the elevation, if you started breaking it down into chunks and looking at the elevation, there was a good amount of riding where we could actually ride rolling to countryside, that suits me a bit more. The climbs, even though I fared well in Pan Celtic 21, the climbs were 20% up and 20% down. When I was in this Pan Celtic 22, I thought it suited me a little bit more. Longer climbs, less elevation overall, and descents as well. Where you can crack on.
Because it was the previous edition, was it shorter in distance but more elevation then? Yeah,
it was about 200 miles shorter. There was another 30% elevation, and it was just the way the elevation came at you. Cornwall and North Devon they were just brutal. It was 2 days of brutality. You had nothing left after 2 days because you'd been climbing in the terrible weather. Every hill was 20% up, and every descent you were on the brakes.
Yeah. No
So
rest.
it was just hard.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's kind of how I was expecting Ireland to be. Like just like looking at the map initially, like looking at how it went around the coast. I was
Yeah.
assuming that most of the climbing would be, constantly up and down, a bit like Cornwall, but
Actually, it was quite nice, wasn't it?
yeah, sort of those longer climbs.
Yeah, it was almost ideal cycling, really, because most of it wasn't brutal.
Mm.
The brutal bits Mally had put in there on purpose.
Yeah. I was going to say there's probably like 2 or 3 places that I remember thinking that these must have been picked out especially because of the just how steep they were or how long they were.
Locals don't go up pre-sleep every day, do they, for fun?
No. Yeah, that was definitely a challenge, that one. After you finished and came second in the 2021 version, how is your planning different? Like, I presume you learned quite a lot doing that.
Yeah, so I guess I guess it was all mental preparation for getting me to that start line in good shape, which I know how to do. I know how to sort of coach myself, if you like. But it was about mental preparation and acknowledging that I was going to try and go close to the line to failure. I think is that a way of describing how you try to win these things? You push yourself so hard that you're on a knife edge where you might bonk. You might come unstuck and get too tired. I knew that I was going to go next level on that aspect, if you like. And there's quite a lot of mental preparation for me that goes into that. I think you sort of mentally rehearse that tiredness, don't you? Knowing that you put yourself in a hole, so it's not a surprise when it comes.
Yeah. That's interesting. I guess we came in from different angles because I've done I did road racing about 7 years ago or something, like Crips and those kind of racing. Then since then I haven't really done anything competitive. Just been doing all axes and weekend bikepacking trips, and I think the tiredness aspect, like obviously when you're just riding like a weekend bikepacking trip, I never really push myself to those extremes. So for me, I was actually quite surprised that how my body did cope with it. Not always that well, but I guess we came in it from a slightly different experiences, didn't we?
Yeah, there's a type of person involved in that as well, isn't there? Some people I'm sure can turn up to a start line quite relaxed and not necessarily need to go through that process that I've just described, but I certainly do. And I guess it does add a level of stress because all of a sudden you've got expectations on yourself. But I think I came to this event, now I've fully debriefed myself, I can sort of quite openly say, I definitely came to that event not just to get the best out of myself, but to be at that pointy end and take a risk to be at the pointy end. No matter who I came up against, I was gonna follow them or try to stay in front of them. Even if that meant that everything I knew about how much sleep I needed meant breaking those rules and just trying to manage.
And obviously then Alex Boswell was probably your main sort of target, was he?
Yeah, well, he was a known entity. He was motivated. He verbally said he was chasing for a win, if you like, or at least to be a bit competitive. And he's a strong rider. So somebody certainly to judge my efforts off. Certainly in those first few hours, if Alex goes fast, I go fast.
Yeah.
I was probably a little bit more guarded with my strategy for setting off on that first day. Alex said he was going through the night. Well, I already knew in my head I was going through the night, but I wasn't really. I was going to obviously chase Alex, and we were on the same strategy in that first 24 hours. So, and then after that, it's unknown people. I was unknown in 21. Chris had to battle somebody that he didn't know anything about in 2021, and on that first day, I had no information. I didn't look at map progress in that first day. I had David around me. So he was unknown. So he was just somebody I had to sort of like think, okay, this guy's an unknown. How hardcore is he?
Yeah. And I guess especially the first day or so, everyone, like when the flag dropped and we left Rosslare and the ferry, it was sort of there's so many of us, and that everyone's just been sat down for about 2 days, and everyone was just so excited to leave. It was almost like, you sort of had to hold yourself back. Or I did it anyway. That I felt that.
Yeah, no, I intentionally didn't do that. I definitely wanted to use that energy at the start, and actually, I shot off out the front when Mally let us go, and I didn't look back. And I only ever had Alex in front of me for about 6-10 hours, maybe.
Yeah.
So to be honest, I sort of wanted to be there because I didn't want to look at my phone. I didn't want to get involved with the tracking in that first couple of days. So by only having Alex in front of me, I knew everybody else was behind me.
Yeah.
So I didn't need map progress. I just needed to concentrate on my own strategy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think it was. Obviously this is the first event that I've done, and I think it was. So I came into it without too much expectation, apart from wanting to finish it. And I think it was about. And actually, before the event, I thought I probably would have a 2-hour nap on the first night, and it was only sort of like speaking to people on the ferry that they were like, "Oh no, just keep on going through the night," and I was like, "Okay, maybe I'll give it a go."
Yeah. So I looked at that as an evening start, and I've done quite a few evening starts in the past. And you can't, if you want to be at the point end, you can't really sleep on that. You've got to kind of try and fit it in before, which is what I did. Like my strategy started on the ferry. It was get food, get sleep, start at 7 o'clock when we hit Rosslare.
Yeah. Okay. So then so it was effectively you and Alex and Dave at the front, wasn't it? All through the night, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I met David in the morning to get a right good chat with him, and I just remember mentally saying to myself, well, if this guy's brave, he's got no kit, but he's young, he's travelling light, I don't want to be on a ferry with him at Dublin. I just made a mental note of that.
Yeah.
Weighing him up. And I must admit, I guess I kind of discounted him a little bit because I didn't think his strategy could work. I thought one whole night and he's going to be behind. I'm quite impressed with how well he rode in the end, because I've had a quick look at the tracker earlier today just to remind myself of a few things, and he rode hard all the way through and had a lot more stop time than most people. And it's a good strategy, like having proper rest in places, does definitely help you ride better. And then I think there's just luck involved, isn't there, in whether that strategy works in that race.
Yeah.
You can certainly be in a similar place on the road, traveling as light as he did, and using overnight accommodation.
Yeah, I think I find it. I think I'm quite used to just bivvying, that kind of the sort of racing aspect. I feel quite comfortable with, and I think I feel a bit anxious about finding accommodation, especially in some of the sort of west part of Ireland. That it wasn't like there weren't towns and cities the whole way around. That it was quite small, like independent B&Bs, I guess, which
so exactly that.
Sleep.
When I looked at the route, I thought you needed to be carrying a bivvy, and you needed to have that certainly in that second half, and from a strategic point of view, it just gave you the flexibility to get a rest when you needed it. But I do like a B&B. I definitely strategize towards a B&B as close to Tarbert Ferry as possible.
Okay.
I had a Google map pinned with all the ones closest to the route, and as we got closer, I started emailing them to see how late they were willing to stay up for me.
Okay, and did you actually stay at any?
Yeah. So I stayed when I met you on the road. It was just me rolling out of a B&B, rolling out of bed.
Okay, just for the Tarbert Ferry.
Right on the it was 10 miles to the Tarbert Ferry.
Okay.
Yeah, so you were just there, weren't you? And I'd literally just come up a driveway of a B&B.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay, that's interesting. Because I just thought you were. Yeah, I didn't realise you'd B&B'd at all.
It's a massive part of my strategy, the Tarbert Ferry, and my arrival close to Tarbert. It's really interesting.
Okay, so when did you decide, that ferry? Because obviously, at the second day it was checkpoint 2 at Dingle, and that was the second day. And you obviously, and you obviously just went straight through the checkpoint 2, didn't you? I think
Yeah.
they said you were the quickest person in and out of the checkpoint 2.
Yeah, and I'm wrong there, aren't I? It was Tuesday. Tuesday was CP2.
Yeah.
It didn't need. I didn't need to stop there for provisions, so I didn't stop there. You know, I'd been to the shop.
Yeah.
We had that big loop, didn't we? Was it a 30, 40 mile loop back to Dingle?
Yeah.
I had it worked out that I could get back to Dingle before the shop shut. So it didn't make any sense to stop in CP2.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And when did you sort of calculate, you know, the ferry that you wanted, or was that just
I calculated that it wasn't very likely that you could catch the ferry the night before. Right from before we set off, my mind was on the first ferry on the Wednesday morning.
Yeah.
Now, you know, it didn't have to be the first ferry on Wednesday morning. It obviously depended on where other people were. But clearly, if that was a big window where you could try to get near it, the ferry wasn't running. Nobody could get away from you, and you could go to bed.
Yeah.
You know, nobody could go across until 7:30 in the morning. So no matter what time you bedded down, as close as you could get, nobody could get ahead of you at that point.
Yeah.
So that was quite a strategic point for me, if you like, and I, you know, tried to execute a plan to maximize sleep at that point.
Yeah, and I think that really paid off, didn't it? Because I was because I got to checkpoint 2 just behind Alex, and I've been chasing him. I think my sort of motivation was just chase Alex and chase you, and you know, just at some point try and overtake. And Alex stopped at checkpoint 2, and so I didn't feel I sort of felt I could carry on. I didn't feel I needed to sleep right then. So that's my main motivation for so I could, you know, overtake him, and also knew that I'd want to be as fresh as I could once I got the ferry in the morning. You know, otherwise you're obviously riding all the way from Dingle to the ferry.
Yeah, which is what Alex did, isn't it? You know, like the three of us were on that ferry, and we'd all had sort of different experiences to get to that point, which is interesting, really, because I was fresh. I mean, I'll tell you now, I'd got to the B&B. The amazing lady had waited up for me till about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. She let me go into the breakfast area and demolish a few bowls of cereals. And then she insisted on making me a cooked breakfast in the morning at 6 o'clock.
Nice.
I had a cooked breakfast and 5 hours in a bed.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. That was just, and I think I could tell that when I, you know, after we arrived on the other side of the ferry, that you just looked so much fresher.
Yeah. I felt really good. Like it was probably the most confident I was in the race, if you like.
Yeah.
Because that confidence started to wane as you chased me, but and you know the doubts about whether I could get that Friday night ferry started to come in. But yeah, at that point I felt really quite confident, because that was the first time I'd turned my phone on as well. So it was the first time I'd looked at map progress.
Really?
Yeah. I guess yes, I'd laid in bed and studied it a little bit, and I'd realised that something was wrong with Alex, and then I'd realised that that you'd effectively executed the same strategy to me, but then bivvied and had a lot less sleep. So on the ferry, I just felt like I'm the guy with fresh legs and a good feed. You know, and at the start of the day, I've done less than anybody else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you were just straight out of bed and fresh. But as I sort of knew that I wanted to get as close as I could to the ferry. Just so I did have fresh legs. But that, I think by that, I think I've been riding for like 26, 27 hours, and I was just, and that, because I think after, like, it's weird how your mind plays with you, because we'd done, you know, like, is it 400 kilometers or something?
In miles to the Tarbert Ferry, it was 680 from Rosslare.
Yeah. I think checkpoint 2 it was about 400 or something like that, and then it was like 120k to the ferry, and in my mind that felt really close. Just because I just thought it's only 100k, but it was just, and then it's overnight, and it was just, I was completely knackered. That was the first time I started hallucinating, and I was just not in a good place then. So
I mean, I enjoyed that evening ride. I think it felt like I'd broken free from everybody. you know, so it gave me a boost to sort of keep on that strategy that was sort of paying dividends, I guess, if you like, you know. And in my mind, it was like, well, it's still only halfway. Don't get too excited. You know, like there's a lot that can happen. And it, like I say, I started studying the tracker that evening, and there was obviously us three that were going to make that first ferry. I sort of knew Alex would make it, although when I went to sleep, he hadn't left. He hadn't left Dingle, but I thought he'd be there. And then there was another group, and I thought they're going to get morning ferries, you know. So David and I can't remember all the names. Stuart Haynes is always chugging away in the background.
Yeah, and because obviously the Tarbert Ferry was fairly frequent, wasn't it? Was it every hour?
Every hour, yeah.
Yeah, so obviously, but then I guess it goes back down to like the fresh legs, isn't it? But they've obviously ridden.
Yeah.
All during the night, and then got the ferry, and then.
Yeah, so you're sort of waiting to see how the nighttime plays out again, aren't you? The next night to see, you know. So that was certainly what I was thinking about that day, you know. So we're talking Wednesday now, aren't we?
Yeah.
You know, I felt like I'd got on that ferry with only 10 miles soft pedaling in my legs. Must admit, I was really short of supplies though that morning. Really? So that was on my mind. Yeah, I'd pretty much eaten everything that I had. I think I had a couple of bars, and I didn't want to stop too soon that Wednesday morning. I wanted to show a bit of strength, if you know what I mean. And come lunchtime, I realised that I'm just going to have a stop here. I'm going to have a restock, get some food. And that's when you guys actually came past me again. But I watched you go past. I was down a side street at a spar shop.
Okay, yeah.
I sort of felt okay about it because that confidence from being fresher than you guys was still there. And also it was a really justified stop, you know, when you can sort of justify things, you know, you sort of need it because it's actually going to help you in the long run.
Yeah,
a good half hour stopping there and some food, and it was just a case of like thinking, right, what's the strategy here? You know, Alex, for example, had done 75 miles riding that morning. He's going to have to stop at some point. Just because he hasn't stopped now means that it's okay for him to pass me. And like I said, it cycled for 8 hours or whatever. And we were at near enough the same place. So you're kind of waiting for nighttime, aren't you, for the sleepies to bite people?
Yeah,
when's it going to bite Kerry? When's it going to bite Alex? And how long am I going to go to get ahead of him and get a buffer? Yeah, I didn't feel like chasing and being too reactive to the map was really appropriate at that point. I think it was still just a case of service my body with fuel, water, ride at the sensible pace, and stretch the hours in the day. So that stop allowed me to pretty much. I think I supplied myself there thinking about how I was going to ride, not through the night, but certainly before breakfast the next morning, if that makes sense. And that's what I did. I rode through till about 2 a.m. I had 2 hours off the bike and then started again, but I knew I had supplies to get me through till the shops opening the next morning.
On that point, I'd be interested to know how much food you normally take, and like, do you normally look at the map and see some like towns where you can supply, or do you just make sure you've got enough food for
I think the whole day? There was times when I bought food because I wanted it and was hungry and I needed stuff and I was ready for a 10-minute off the bike, so I'd stop at a shop. But there's certainly times like that Wednesday midday-ish where I thought I want to get supplies so that I don't have to stop if I don't need to. You know, so the bag was open at the back, the frame bag was open, and I was just filling it with whatever there was in the shop really. Pockets were full.
Yeah.
And that was strategic buying of food, if you like, so that to exercise a bit of strategy.
Yeah. I think I found it funny. I think it was that Wednesday evening. It was after we passed Galway, and by that point, actually just before then, I was sort of like riding with Alex a little bit. You know, he would overtake me and I'd overtake him again, and that was when he mentioned to me that he had some issues and felt lightheaded, and obviously he stopped for 8 hours or so in Galway, and I think that was the first point. Then suddenly I was in second position, and that kind of felt a bit different. I think that's kind of the point when I started focusing a bit more on, chasing you and trying to keep the second place. But I remember a point when it was about an hour's outside of Galway that I stopped at the Spa and got a sandwich, and then the shop owner was like, "Oh yeah, your friend's like just left about like 15 minutes ago," and I was like, I should just
yeah. So so that was the first time I stopped after midday, and I just basically did a little top up sort of evening time. I think I tend to try and structure my stops around normal meal times, if you like, so breakfast, lunch, and some kind of evening stop.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for me that's all I really need, as long as I've got other stuff in my pockets. And then it allows you also to think forward a little bit. So my top up basically just was there to make sure I had enough water to get me through riding through the night, or with a stop and then into the morning before the shops opened again. Because I mean, there weren't many 24-hour garages up there, were there?
No.
You were waiting till 8 o'clock most mornings, weren't you? And at night, in the dark, it's hard to find water unless there's a shop or a pub. I mean, I stopped at a few pubs before last orders.
Okay.
That was sort of a common thing that I'd do: go through a village, 11 o'clock-ish, go in a pub, get water, and then go off into the night.
Yeah, I think I found, just because, I don't know. I don't think I got so hungry during the night. I think it's maybe because I had an evening meal and then sleeping. And then obviously, if you sleep for a few hours, then that obviously cuts out some of the night anyway. And then ride for a few hours, and then hopefully, then find somewhere once the shops start opening.
Yeah, I mean,
again.
I never struggled to get food. I never ran out. Never. There was always a little village shop or something, and they were quite pleasant places to go to, weren't they? You didn't have to, and it was easy to find supplies. I thought once you acknowledge that there isn't stuff open at night, you could sort of plan for that.
Lots of small spas and little convenience stores that were quite almost the best kind of shop, because they're quite small, that you can just access everything quite quickly, can't you?
But we're talking now really about a time in the race so we're talking about Wednesday night, aren't we, where I didn't know that something was up with Alex at that point, but it dropped back, so I presumed there was something other than just dropping back, if you like. And that was, I think I did look at Instagram eventually to find out what was going on. But we're talking about a point in the race now where I considered you to be the only threat to me winning the Pan Celtic race.
Yeah.
And because I think the majority of people behind Alex that night where he stopped were about 100 miles away, which is enough of a buffer so it was enough of a buffer to think, okay, so they're not going to catch me before Dublin, but it was also like, well, actually they can still get the same ferry as me.
Yeah. That was the thing with the ferries being every 12 hours, that 12 hours of cycle, you can
the worst case scenario, isn't it, that you just miss one and then 10 people join you for the next one.
Yeah.
But I'd also started to work out that Friday night ferry was possible. Hence the reason I had such a short sleep that night. It was a case of thinking to myself, okay, so in my mind I'd envisaged a dash to the ferry at the end, and maybe, for example, one of those strategies to employ to a dash to a ferry would be to go all night, to cycle through the night to get there the next day. But I thought to myself, it's daft. I think I need to do it now. I think I need to actually open that door now. So we're halfway through the race, or just over halfway. Let's just do that now. Let's just go through the night tonight, have a 2-hour stop, which includes the sleep, and then go tomorrow and see where I'm at.
Yeah. And did you think that, like, when you were calculating which ferry, like, did you think you'd make that Friday evening like fairly easily, or did you think it would be?
I mean, it was really funny actually, because I was having to do maths like 3 times because my short-term memory, I'd work something out and then I think I need to double check that. So I'd double check it and rework it, if you like, and then I think, actually, I've forgotten what I came up with the first time.
Yeah.
Let's do it a third time now. So it'd take me hours to go run through calculations, and looking back a little bit at what speed I was actually managing. How long was it taking to do 50 miles? So I'd worked out that it was taking about total time, over the last few days, I've been covering 50 miles every 4 hours. Which, if you think about it, in like going out for a day ride, is just, it's so slow, isn't it? But time and obviously the pace we were really riding at.
There's so many aspects, isn't it? You've got the elevation, you've got the headwinds and tailwinds, and you've got your luggage, and you've got the sort of like general tiredness and the fatigue. Yeah.
So I'd kind of worked that. I'd worked out on that calculation basically, and then added for hours in for another sleep. And I realised that there was definitely Friday night option.
I think when we left the Tarbert Ferry, I was trying to calculate it, and I think we sort of discussed it, didn't we, when we met there? And I think I was similar to you. I think I was just so knackered that my brain wasn't quite functioning right, and I was kind of facing the sort of distance, or the distance that I could cover off the first 2 days. But obviously, the first 2 days were about, like, I think the first day was 27 hours riding for me, and then the second day was 26 or something. There's obviously more than the 24 hour that in the day, and so I was thinking that you would get I thought you'd do a targeting the Friday morning one, which obviously with the elevation, with the headwind that we had at the beginning, it's pretty hard to do. But so then in my head, then I thought the Friday evening one would be quite achievable.
Yeah.
So whereas I think I was definitely a lot slower than I thought I was in my head.
So I waited until that Wednesday evening to work all that out.
Yeah.
Stayed pretty transfixed on just covering miles, and not really jumping to any conclusions too soon. I guess that's maybe an experience thing, and also maybe my mindset was racing, and not looking, maybe you were just there to get around, but you were chasing me.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I was obviously at the front trying to defend to some extent, and I had two ways of defending, didn't I? Really, is defend by being first to the ferry, but then obviously if I could catch a ferry that you couldn't.
Yeah.
So obviously the carrot was there, wasn't it? That Friday night ferry, and on my maths at the end of Wednesday night, it was like there's actually a chance here that I can catch a ferry that Kerry can't.
Yeah.
So that became another quite a big sort of confidence boost or motivational boost, because when you're given something like that to chase, it's something you go for, isn't it?
The sort of like the pressure change on you when you. Like,
do you know what? I was feeling so much pressure, but that I put on myself that I don't think possibly could become more. I think I was enjoying the fact that things were going well for me. So I think that was the overriding sort of emotion I was feeling at that time. I was sort of executing my plan, so I was quite chuffed with myself. I was certainly riding well; like the legs were great. I think that sometimes comes from that positive state of mind I've managed to sort of put myself in. And I wasn't too sleepy on a night. I think because it was so much, like it was so motivational to execute a plan that was working. It was sort of jumping up on a morning and thinking, like that Wednesday night, for example, I woke up really cold actually, and I just thought, right, what do I need to do here? I need to just put my sleeping bag away and set off cycling to get warm.
Yeah.
The day started, I was on it. Didn't have a lot of time for thinking to myself, I'd rather just stay here for another half hour. Took warm. I was on it, I never really dropped that until I got to Dublin.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I was pretty focused.
Yeah, and obviously, so the Wednesday, we were still going up the west coast, weren't we?
Yeah.
And that was it what was the climb called? Is it like
it was on Achill Island, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, that was the one. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was nice actually. It was really fun actually. Toby and the media crew came out to see me there. And it was all a bit too familiar, really, because they had the drone out, and I was struggling up a climb, which is kind of one of the really cool bits of footage that they got of me last year. And I remember shouting to them, I'm like, I ain't stopping to talk unless you want to meet me at that supermarket, because I'm stopping at that supermarket. There was a supermarket the point on that we went on to and off Achill Island.
Okay, yeah.
And I said I'll stop there because I'm stopping anyway. And they came and saw me and followed me around the supermarket with a camera, and that's exactly what they did last year in Wales.
Okay, yeah.
It was very, very familiar and quite funny that we were sort of doing the same things. But I wasn't stopping. It was full gas at that point. I mean, as much as you can be full gas in touring mode when you're that tired 4 days in. But reducing stop time, certainly.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's quite an interesting point for me, at least, that because it was sort of like a 4-hour lap, wasn't it, of the island, and that was the kind of distance I was behind you. And
yeah,
so
it was.
Yeah, and it's sort of that you just came off the island and I was just getting on it, and it was just quite a nice sort of like marker that I sort of knew that was how far I was behind you. It's quite nice to see.
Yeah, so I'd noticed that as well. Like the gap was at 50 miles near enough, and it was never changing. From that afternoon or that evening, was it Wednesday evening? Yeah, so the Wednesday evening where we had the short sleep, it was 50 miles that morning, and it stayed at 50 miles right to the end.
Yeah, and also for me, the same thing almost happened with Dave as well. But I think behind me it was Dave and Alex. They're both quite close, and it was almost just as I came off the island, they started. I
mean, it's amazing how fast Alex came back. I started to worry about him. I thought he's going to be so motivated. I honestly believe that he can pull it back. And
yeah. He was
Bearing in mind
so much time.
Bearing in mind that I was thinking, okay, I'm targeting this ferry, but if I miss it, I'm with loads of people.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking Alex is going to be there, so he's going to be a tough person to beat on Anglesey.
Yeah.
I'm thinking there's you and there's Dave. They're going to be tough people to beat on the Orme. These were all things to motivate me to get away from you all. You know what I mean? That was Thursday, wasn't it? It was a tough climb, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think that was the first time that I had any sort of like because before the event I had some like knee issues at beginning of the year, and I was hoping that they wouldn't show themselves, and that was the only time when I started feeling like a few aches and pains in my body. Just because it's like, is it 3 kilometers at 12% or something? And
it was a long time, wasn't it, in bottom gear? Stood up.
Yeah, and I think it's just how, because that was probably the race started to spread out quite a lot then, didn't it? Especially at the front end.
Yeah.
That you sort of felt like that you were just on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you could definitely identify a group of people that were very unlikely to catch the same ferry as you if you managed to keep going at the pace we were. But there was 2 days of cycling. Well, no, we're talking about the Thursday now. A day and a half of cycling to be done, 300 miles ish probably from there.
Yeah.
A little bit more. So you can't sit on your laurels with that amount of miles because you can sleep in or you can have a problem. And
I think it was that point that then I realised that the people behind me probably wouldn't. I knew then that you were aiming for the Friday night ferry, and that was the one that I was aiming for. And I knew if I got that one, it'd be quite unlikely that anyone else would be able to get that one as well.
Yeah. So I by that evening I'd come to the same conclusion. It was like, okay, so I've got a strategy for making that ferry. I know how many miles I've got to do tonight. I know how long that'll take me, or there or thereabouts, and I know that I can make it if I stick to some kind of schedule.
Yeah.
I had it in my mind that it was possible for you to get it, but it was tight. And then effectively, if I didn't get that ferry, I was on the ferry with about 8 people.
Yeah.
I think. Actually, did it turn out to be how many? No, how many were with you?
It was just me, me, Dave, and Stephen.
Yeah.
But then obviously Alex, Alex would have made it if he didn't have the mechanical issues on the last stretch.
Yeah, that's it. So there were a few people waiting there to join us.
Yeah.
If that had played out that way.
Yeah.
I mean, the way I approached that was that I found a point on the map which was, it basically left me with 220 miles to do. and I worked out at what time I needed to leave that point.
Okay, yeah.
So going into the evening, and I found a point on the map. I needed to leave that point, and I had it worked out. It was about 1:30 in the morning. So whatever time I got there, didn't matter. I was leaving at 1:30.
Yeah.
So the amount of rest I had was dictated by leaving that point at 1:30, which is what I did. I think I got about another 2.5 hours.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, because that was the point when my race started to sort of fall apart a little bit. Because on the Wednesday, from the Thursday morning, I'd calculated how much I needed to do to get the ferry, and I knew it would be tight.
Yeah,
but I kind of thought, just on the basis of how much I'd managed to sleep, previously, I think I calculated. I think I could have like 90-minute sleep, which I think by that point I think I probably needed more, but it was just because the goal was the sort of end was so close, wasn't it?
Of course, you had potential for challenging for a win, didn't you?
Yeah. I don't think I ever thought that I could win it.
Right.
By the fact that I sort of thought that I could be on the same ferry as you, because of the fact that you're always so much far in front of me. Most of the time you're like 50 miles or so in front. That I never thought I would be able to beat you on the final stretch.
I think that was maybe in my mind the final card I had left to play, wasn't it? Was that if I'd have missed that Friday night ferry, I'd have been basically sat there for 12 hours, give or take.
Yeah.
Plus then the time on the ferry. So you would have been looking. I would have been looking at a 14, 15, 16-hour rest.
Yeah.
Having to race that last 50 miles with whoever else had caught the next ferry, and I would have probably. It's hard to say though, because I was in not great shape cycling that last 50 miles, but maybe my body had wound itself down. Maybe it didn't need to.
Yeah. And I guess mentally you sort of knew
you have a different experience there. You maybe had to see something. And maybe if I'd have been in that situation, I would have stayed in the zone and been able to race. But certainly on that Saturday morning, my legs did not want to work. Yeah. I mean, I was super happy. I was loving cycling. I was loving the fact that I was going to cross the finish line first, but the legs weren't particularly thankful. They were. They took a bit of getting going, and I couldn't cycle fast enough to stay warm.
Okay.
It was just like I'd had a sleep on the ferry, and my body was like, you don't want to do this. It was. In a bit of a hole, if I'm honest, and it was like a finish line hole. It had relaxed.
Yeah. Okay. And just before you got the ferry, when did you realise that I wasn't going to make it?
Yeah, so I stopped.
Were you sort of looking at that then?
Yeah, I was checking map progress a lot that afternoon, and I was quite sleepy as well. I think the closer I got to Dublin, and the more I stayed on my schedule, and actually got a little bit ahead of my schedule, I must have started to relax, because I started getting really sleepy, and it was a hot afternoon, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was really hot that day.
I got really sleepy. I was stopping for ice creams and cans of Coke and that, and I basically was checking map progress every hour or two. And there was a climb. There was a decent climb, wasn't there?
Yeah.
You must have got down to 40 miles when I checked, and I'm thinking he can make this ferry. I'm ahead of my schedule, which means that the buffer that I'd allowed myself was the window for you to catch up. I'm thinking he can make it. And I think it wasn't until about 5 o'clock I thought, actually, it's tighter for me now, because I've had a bit of time off the bike, a bit of time where I've needed to slow down and deal with the sleepiness. Kind of dealing with the same thing, because I think after I descended that hill, it was back to 50 miles. And like 50 miles just seemed to be a recurring thing there every time I for 50 miles. In my mind, that was 4 hours or 3.5 at a push if you were really motivated to make a ferry.
I think I kind of knew a bit earlier, because obviously, I sort of similar to you, I planned how far I had to, how much sleep I could have on that final night, and that was when I guess that's partly my inexperience potentially, or just not having everything I should. All my battery packs were empty and my phone was completely dead. so I couldn't set a alarm on my phone, and I think because it was quite misty that evening, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was drizzled, didn't it, all morning the next morning.
Yeah, and I think I was because I hadn't had much sleep at the Tarbert Ferry. Oh no, yeah. Anyway, I hadn't really had much sleep, so I wasn't thinking straight, and I sort of thought that I'd just wake up naturally after about like an hour, which obviously didn't happen, and it was only like I think it's 4 hours later, 4 and a bit hours later when like a lorry passed me on. I was just sleeping on the side of the road, like a field entrance.
Right.
It's only I think 4 o'clock that I finally woke up and left about 4:30, I think, and I was aiming to leave it more like 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock, and
because if you'd have done that, you would have made it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it's difficult to tell.
It's hard to know though, for sure, because what would have that short sleep done to you?
Yeah, exactly. Because after the sort of 4 or 5 hours sleep, my legs felt quite good, and then I kind of recalculated the sort of the average speed I'd have to do to get that ferry, and for the first like 4 hours I was on target.
Yeah.
But that was obviously before the hill started, and then it was getting just closer and closer, and I think that because the two like fairly decent climbs, weren't they? And there
was a little horseshoe, wasn't there?
Yeah, the horseshoe one, and then there's
like
one
a pass. It was more like a pass, wasn't it? It was a real like alpine climb, quite a long, steady climb.
Yeah, and
I don't know how head up you were. I was obviously admiring the views. By that point, quite relaxed. Did you get your head up on the Achill Island? Sorry to go back to that point, but it was amazing there.
Yeah, that was stunning. Yeah.
It was. I mean, I must admit, I sort of was halfway down the descent before I realised how cool it was up there. Do you know what I mean? Like I was so focused, I did a U-turn at the top and then went break next week. But yeah, just to go back, the next place that evening in Connemara, that was pretty spectacular as well. Like I don't know how much you had time to, have a look at.
Was that when there were quite a few loops around?
Well, just in those last couple of days, that coastline, it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think it's sort of interesting. Because I think normally when I'd cycle, I'd sort of obviously stop a lot more and take it easy. When you're riding along, obviously there's so much to see, but then at the same time you're so focused on that goal and on the riding.
Yeah, exactly the same. And photographs have helped me quite a lot. After the event, I didn't take any, but looking at everybody else's and thinking, oh yeah, I remember that bit. It all goes in, even though you're racing and you're focused and you're doing maths and you're trying to make a ferry and making all these decisions. The view's still there. That's the beauty of the bike, isn't it?
Yeah.
But then sometimes it doesn't actually come out of your. It's like you have to see it again to remember it. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I'm interested, mate. Obviously, we talked about that last few hours and when you sort of gave up, if you like, and when I realised that you weren't going to make that ferry. When you got to Dublin, what was your mindset then? Because you must have been looking at David.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that did definitely affect me. I think when I first woke up and realised I'd overslept quite a lot. I was just so focused and just knew that I had to just crack on as fast as I could. So for those sort of like 4 or 5 hours of it, the first thing I was just so focused on trying to aim for that ferry. And then obviously then I realised that there wasn't much chance of me making that. And also that because I didn't really have much battery left, I had a little bit on my Garmin, but nothing else. So I almost thought as well that even if I did get a decent way, then there's potentially chance for my Garmin to run out of battery, and then I'd be like, 30 kilometers outside of Dublin with no way of navigating. So I thought, so I stopped at the shop, and I think by that point I just knew that there wasn't much chance of me reaching that ferry, and it was just different because obviously the whole race was so focused, and suddenly it was almost as if it was all over, and it was just like, I was quite upset with myself and just like, thought, it was just a frustrating thing that happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was interesting because then so for the last like 150k, I was riding to Dublin knowing that I wouldn't be able to make that ferry, and I think that was the first point in the race that I just started, looking around sort of the scenery a little bit more, and just taking a bit more like relaxed, which is quite nice actually.
Yeah, and it was probably a good strategy, wasn't it? There's no point tiring yourself out at that point. It was actually more about how do you become the most rested person on the boat.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and yeah, so I think I arrived into Dublin about half 11 roughly.
Yeah. Well, at least you weren't like watching the boat go.
No. But
it did occur to me that I needed to stand on the back of it to prove that you didn't come on.
Run and jump on it as it's leaving.
Yeah.
But then it was a matter of.
So did you go into the like lounge on the port and just gossip?
Well, it's quite funny because I arrived in Dublin at like midnight, and then obviously it's I was just trying to find somewhere that I could bivvy.
Yeah.
and I went into the ferry terminal, and then I was riding down to the where the ferries go, and then the security guard came over and asked me what I was doing, and I was like, oh, just about 8 hours early for my ferry. And they were like, yeah, sorry, there's nowhere to stay here. So I found the service station.
Yeah.
And then slowly, lots of people from the short route started coming in. And it was sort of one of those things where you can get a little bit of sleep, and so I just tried to lie down as much as possible. There wasn't like didn't get a really good sleep, but I knew that every bit of rest that I could get would benefit me. And it was. Yeah, and I think most of that time I was, kept looking at the map, seeing where Alex, Dave, and Stephen were.
Yeah.
Just because I thought Alex would definitely make it, and then I wasn't too sure about Dave and Stephen. But then obviously it turned out that Alex had mechanical issues, and it was Dave and Stephen. I think it was getting quite close there, wasn't it? I don't know if you're watching it.
I was not watching it because so we're looking. I was probably at breakfast in the Premier Inn of Conway, actually demolishing the all-you-can-eat breakfast buffet. So I was. I can't say I was looking, but I think I'd noticed after I'd finished that it was probably going to be 3 of you. Yeah,
because I think they arrived about 6:30, so they're about they only had about an hour and a half before the ferry went.
Mm.
And they were, I think, might have even been less. I'll have to check. But I know they were pushing the whole night.
Right, to get.
Yeah, so it was, it was a close run for them.
Yeah.
And I think that was the only thing that was sort of.
And were you social on the boat? Did everybody go their own separate ways, or?
A little bit. I had some breakfast first, and then just tried to get as much sleep as I could. So I think I probably had like 2 hours sleep.
Yeah.
On the ferry as well, and that was the same for Dave. I think he tried to get some sleep, and Stephen. I think Stephen booked a cabin to try and maximise sleep.
Yeah.
And I was I think all the time I was pretty nervous, especially seeing as we mentioned earlier that Dave had very different strategy to us.
Yeah.
And just had a very minimal setup and a light bike. And he was telling me all about his like hill climbing and
exactly.
Road racing.
He told me all about that as well. And like I'd said right at the beginning of the race, I was like, I don't want to be in a ferry with that guy.
Yeah. So, but I think the only thing that was keeping me going was knowing that I'd obviously had waited 8 hours in Dublin and then 4 hours on the ferry, whereas they'd been smashing it all night to try and reach the ferry. And then it was quite nice to meet him.
I mean, it's the same feeling that I've talked about at Tarbert, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
It's very similar. You sort of experiencing what I felt like at Tarbert.
Yeah, definitely. And that was the first time I guess how you said you felt a little bit towards the end of the race when you thought that I might catch you. That was the first time that I'd felt any pressure.
Yeah.
Obviously, I didn't come into the race. I was just trying to get around it, and then that was the first time that then I was obviously in the second position, and then Dave was and Dave and Stephen were potentially taking that from me.
Did Stephen push you across Anglesey then? Was he tractoring like he does?
No, so after we left the ferry, then quite quickly we lost him, and I wasn't too sure if that was just me and Dave going off too quickly, or whether that's whether he was just from the lack of sleep. So all the way, I think it was like 80 kilometers, wasn't it, to the finish line, and most of that way, me and Dave were just either I was in front of him or he was in front of me, but we just always had our sights on each other. And it was difficult to tell how his legs were, because it's so flat, and I knew that we had the hill, and I think he knew that as well. We both knew that it was probably going to end there. That's where it's going to be decided. But it was actually quite a fun way to finish the race, really. Once we got to the bottom of the Great Orme climb, then he attacked on the very first incline, and we had the film camera there as well. So then they then overtook me, and I knew that it was the second incline. So that's when I put my effort in and managed to catch up with Dave and then overtake him. There was only overtaking maybe like 5 meters, and then he then clawed back, and it was just constantly just like neck and neck. And it was just great. It was just a bit of a bizarre way to finish, because it was obviously raced like all the way around Ireland, and then coming to this final sprint.
1,400 miles, is it? In kilometers, 1,400 miles anyway, and then racing over 2 miles on the Orme.
I know. It's just and because it was just it almost felt like a hill climb. Then we had all our luggage with us, and just all the tiredness.
Well, Dave didn't, because he didn't have any luggage.
Apart from Dave.
Was it tempting to throw all the bags off as you approached Llandudno and think I'll go get them later?
That definitely did cross my mind, but I wasn't too sure if that was in the.
No, I don't think so.
But then actually, I guess it's quite a similar finish to how you finished with Chris on the 2021 version, wasn't it?
So me and Chris did end up riding together for a lot longer than you, but it was a different thing, different time, different way to find ourselves in that position, I guess. The ferry didn't force us together. It was sheer position on the road, and effort and to get to that point that we ended up together. But so you did the descent, didn't you? And it's quite a safe descent, isn't it? Because it's one way. So did you sort of race down there as well?
Yeah, kind of. I didn't actually realise it was one way. At the time. And so right at the top of the climb, then we were obviously neck and neck, and I think the difficult thing was that obviously you're not allowed to draft.
No.
And so that was also going through my mind quite a lot, just knowing that it was just difficult to ride and try and race each other when you are so close. And obviously didn't want to be on the right hand side of the road the whole time. So we did the descent, and then I think it was just because we were so busy getting into Llandudno, and there's so many traffic lights and pedestrians that just after we came off the descent, it was obvious that we were pretty neck and neck, and then I just said, should we make a truce? And I think that was kind of obviously following from how you did it last year, and it's sort of
he was probably quite relieved that you'd said it, and you were probably quite relieved when he said, go on then, mate. It wouldn't have been right to race around cars and lights and stuff, would it? It just a much nicer ending to the race the way you did it.
Exactly. It was like and
it wasn't like there was anybody else there, it's just you two. And you'd had a go, hadn't you?
I think
what's different about me and Chris, you had a go up the hill.
I think we both knew we were completely tried our hardest, and that was the way it was finished. And it's great to see you and everyone else there at the finish line. I think that that's definitely something worth mentioning as well. That just how the whole community spirit of it.
It's just amazing. I experienced it last year, and then sort of feel lucky enough to embrace that aspect of it again. And I stayed in Llandudno and pretty much in the front garden until Sunday evening. And obviously with the ferry, you could sort of go off and then come back for the batch of riders. So
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
quite nice, and hearing every stories, it's just great, because we all come over that finish line, and we've travelled, so we've got a story to tell, haven't we? So
yeah, and I think that's something that I really enjoy about the sort of ultra endurance scene. That
yeah,
even though people do race and it is competitive, but it's still that everyone's just so friendly, and everyone's just it's just a really friendly
I mean,
atmosphere.
the great thing about the finish line of the Pan Celtic is that sort of, there's not just the riders there, there's families as well. Sort of come to realise that. So, like, for example, my family have had a journey to the end of the Pan Celtic. They had to put up with me training and then getting a bit Pan Celtic obsessed in that last month, if you like, running up to it. The fact that I was putting a lot of pressure on myself and all that. And it's interesting to hear my partner and my kids talk about it, because it's part of our journey, even though it's me sort of pedaling the bike and taking the glory of the win. But there is a bit more depth to it, and you realise that other people have got that as well. I think you'll be dangerous, mate. I think, look out.
Yeah, but I mean, just by chasing you, I think I learned so much. Just seeing how you how you dealt with the race and your sort of like strategy as well.
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely lots to learn.
It's been great to compare notes, mate. It's been great, and I hope we meet at another event.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure we'll.
We're at the same event. I'll be watching you very closely. Maybe not be able to ignore map progress as much when you're on the start list.
Yeah. Well, it's been great to chat to you, and look forward to seeing your races coming up and your events coming up.
Yeah. It's been good to compare notes, mate.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cheers for coming along.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah. Catch you soon.
See you later, mate. Bye bye.